Big welcome to Tyler. First of all, thank you for agreeing to be our kickoff speaker for our virtual Summer of AI speaker series, sponsored and run by HiredScore. Purpose of this series is to bring in HR leaders like Tyler for discussions on how they led their talent acquisition transformations, how they're doing creative next generation journey work, talking through lessons learned, the good and the bad, and roadmap of what's ahead. So we are grateful and excited to both have all of you in our virtual conference today, and then of course honored to have Tyler take the time out and join us. So thank you, Tyler.
Happy to be here. I'm very excited.
Awesome. Well, I will just kick off the talk. The title of our talk is Unlocking True Talent Advisory at Intel with Artificial Intelligence. As a background for everyone joining on Tyler Weeks, he is the head of HR data at Intel. He is a professional researcher that spent his career telling data-driven stories, worked on everything from fusion reactors, cancer detection, Moore's Law, and of course, a love of HR data, talent analytics, and organizational data, which is where I think you spend even more of your time now. Tyler started at Intel more than 10 years ago, everything from an engineer to a data scientist there, and then transitioned into the field of HR data and now runs the HR data practice. So without further ado, Tyler, I think it would be great if we could just dive right in and kick off with, maybe if you can walk the attendees through your strategy at Intel for the HR transformation. I think Intel is unique in being a company that has extremely talented engineers, data scientists in-house. You are used to building a lot of products that fit the unique needs of Intel as well. And so maybe even setting the stage of how do you think about buy versus build, and how did you think about where to get started on that journey?
Yeah, so I will just make one correction to my introduction. I lead the HR data science function. Our HR data we have a large people analytics organization. But with that, you know, it's interesting. There's and I see a number of my colleagues here on the call, and we're on a long journey to understand how to really accelerate talent acquisition, right? We had gone from a place where our organization had focused solely on cost savings when it came to talent acquisition, saw it purely as an operational function, and we were trying to build a world-class function. Now, to do that without hiring, you know, thousands of recruiters and, you know, like within a certain cost envelope, you have to go look at technologies. You got to look at some things to accelerate the people that you have. And understanding where to apply where to implement solutions is a balancing act. It was not an overnight journey. It was several years of planning and brainstorming and debating and trying and testing and failing and trying again. I will say, you know, being at a tech company like Intel, where we've got a lot of very smart engineers, we have a lot of people that are very interested in the success of our company. We have no shortage of smart, capable data scientists, engineers, mathematicians, researchers that want to help solve this problem of finding good talent. Like finding talent acquisition is something that's near and dear to most people's heart, especially if they've ever had to hire another engineer. So we did have plenty of opportunities, and we actually had some attempts over the years to build in-house, for example, like an AI-based solution for recruiting. To me, there is, and I've made this argument over the years, building an AI in-house may be okay for prototyping or for testing out ideas. The challenge is that using machine learning or AI is only as successful as the data it has to learn. And when you build something like that in-house, you are confined to your company's experience, to your view of, your narrow view of the talent market out there. And your algorithm's only going to learn as fast as you're hiring. So even if we went and built a state-of-the-art solution, maybe even the best in the world, it wouldn't be in 6 months. So, I did make the argument very early on that we should not build our own AI internally, but that we should go partner with a company who, one, is incentivized to have a very good solution because this is their primary business, and that they have customers across the industry, so their algorithm is learning across the breadth of the market and really capturing what good talent looks like. So that was a big component of our strategy from a technology perspective early on, and something that I advocated for along the way.
Yeah. And then I think what's been interesting at Intel is how you break down the recruiter function, the employee experience, and the hiring manager experience, and kind of where you all, when you got started in the journey, thought a lot more of how do we help the recruiters do the things that recruiters are in shortage of time for, uniquely good at, and no algorithm can do. It comes from you, this quote, but you've never met an algorithm that can sell well. Don't try to build an algorithm that can sell versus kind of unbundling the work of the function. So first it's unbundling the role responsibilities of HR, right? Or talent acquisition within that. And then unbundling by components. Should we have humans plus machines, or just humans? And then how do we devise a tech strategy around that? And so maybe if you can even talk about that breakdown in logic.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we did spend a large amount of effort breaking down the work that we were actually doing. So it was beyond just technology. It was sort of re-architecting the roles we have, rethinking of what a recruiter is, what a sourcer is, what a coordinator is. And that was a mountain of work. But it is interesting to look at the work we do, and at a very basic function. If you look at a recruiter, they are a salesperson with one of the hardest sales jobs on the planet, because the thing that they're selling, has opinions and doesn't always act in its best self-interest. Right. On the one hand, they're engaging with candidates and they're selling the idea of working at your company. And then on the other hand, they've got to turn around and they've got to sell that candidate to a hiring manager and kind of help them understand that this is the right candidate for them. And closing that two-ended deal is really, really challenging, especially when you're talking about niche skills or in high demand skills, or really kind of that top talent. It's very relationship based. Those relationships are the core of really where strategic talent acquisition is happening, like the game-changing talent acquisition. Bringing in that big talent for your company. It's built on those relationships. And we've all called our cable provider or our internet provider or somebody and gotten a chatbot that has talked to us and walked us through. That has never sold you anything. You've never talked to that chatbot and thought, I want more of this. Let's sign me up for some more cable. You typically want to throw the phone across the room. So to think that just simply if I have enough, if I have an AI that can parse resumes and parse job descriptions, I can make decisions on who should be hired, and maybe I'll just send them some emails, and then people will be convinced to come work for my company. That's just not how it's going to work. So really, you have to think through not how do I replace the humans in this process. The humans do something uniquely valuable, and that is build relationships. That is the selling piece. So how do I expand their reach? And when we're preparing for this, I know we talked about Dunbar's number, which if folks aren't familiar with it, it's this hypothetical limit about the number of relationships a human can reasonably manage. And that limit tends to be about 150. So if you think about that for a second, about half of that is taken up already by friends and family, right? So you got about 75 slots left. And of those 75 slots, probably 50 of those are taken up by coworkers, colleagues, managers, the hiring managers you work with, the cast of folks kind of around you that you work with on a daily basis, which leaves you about, if you're a recruiter, about 25 slots for candidates, right? You've got 25 that you can reasonably go build relationships with. And if you're at a high demand, fast paced company like Intel, you're probably doing way more than 25 hires a year. You might be doing, 25 a month or 25 a quarter. So how do you possibly maintain enough relationships to really have enough talent in the pipeline to fill all these jobs with top talent? And that's the place that I think we've got opportunity for technologies. I think that's where solutions like HiredScore play a really important part, not in replacing the human, but helping them know where to spend their valuable time. Who should be, I'm not going to have more than 25 slots. Who should be in my 25? How do I know which people are probably the likely ones that I should spend my valuable minutes and calories thinking about?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a long-winded answer, but that was I think central to how we thought about both the people doing this work and the solutions that we were bringing in. How do we accelerate their ability to build relationships? And when we think about, I'll shut up after this, I promise. When we think about those relationships and what we want them doing, there's a lot of discussion out there, and there's blogs and TV shows and interviews and blah, blah, blah about AI and about upskilling the workforce. And what's interesting is most of those seem to center on this idea that upskilling means teaching them all to code, or that they all need to learn how to be data scientists or work with a robot or work with an AI or become like this futuristic worker. I actually think in this case, it's kind of the other way. I need them to go be really good at building relationships, really good at talking to other humans, because that's the thing a robot can't do. Yeah. So it's not about upskilling, it's about focus, helping them focus on the part where they provide the most value. Anyway.
Yeah, I love how you put that. And actually you all at Intel are big users and big innovators in our smart alerts, smart notifications. I think the focusing is, how do you surface issues like this rec's in trouble, or these candidates haven't heard back in 10 days, and kind of remove the friction of, if I'm a recruiter handling 25 simultaneous rec and supposed to be building relationships with managers, with candidates, and moving people through, how do I kind of think of the lower value memory space for me to consume things I need to do versus kind of higher value? And I think it actually connects quite well to another place where what I loved about when we all met was your notion of putting together a best of breed toolkit. So, the HiredScore is one piece that does the sourcing augmentation, the screening augmentation, surfaces good people for me, scores people, alerts me of things. But, your vision was, I also want to experiment with different types of assessment tests and different tech tests and different bots and scheduling automation to chatbots. And I think, would love for you to kind of talk through with this group, how do you think about an ecosystem? Some people are pursuing a single vendor, a silver bullet for all that will kind of accommodate all my needs, versus you guys are kind of at the furthest extreme of, I want to test out different departments, divisions, countries, regions, recruiter types, the toolkit, see what works, and kind of move that forward, right?
Yeah, this is sort of an endless debate, and to be candid, it is a debate internal to Intel. There's a natural tension between experimenters like me. I want to go try all kinds of new stuff, and the folks sustaining our IT infrastructure who are trying to streamline, they're trying to minimize costs, they're trying to minimize kind of people overhead in terms of how you sustain all these systems. So there's a bit of a natural tug of war. I do think, though, that if your goal is to create a strategic, if you believe that cost savings is your primary strategic advantage when it comes to talent acquisition, then you should absolutely just focus on a single enterprise system and that one silver bullet, because you can have a very small team that sustains it. You'll have reasonable solutions, and you will reduce your costs. So if that's your goal, then go do that, because that is going to be cheaper. If you're looking for a strategic advantage in terms of how you identify talent, I love to cite that McKinsey report, The War on Talent, that I think a lot of us have read and reread, and that they've redone a few times, where they basically say that if you're a tech company, so you have highly complex roles, for you to win, you need to be hiring from the top 5% of the labor market. That's not the top 5% of your applicants. That's the top 5% of the labor market. To find those people, to know to be able to identify them or pick them out of a crowd is not an easy task. And if you want to be able to do that and create a strategic advantage for yourself that way, then you do need to start thinking about best in breed. So I think that where you meet in the middle is that you have an enterprise type platform, like a docking station. Like you have that core platform that allows you to plug and play lots of different solutions. So if I want to go, like you said, if I need to go test out a new assessment solution, right? Like maybe there's something about maybe we're investing heavily in I'm just going to make up one, autonomous vacuum cleaners. I don't know, right? And there's something about the people that do this that my solutions aren't quite hitting. I need to be able to go test what can help me find that best talent and be able to drop it in without having to reinvent the wheel. So it's kind of like a hub. I don't like to think of a tech stack as like a Jenga blocks, where you kind of pull one out and hope the whole thing doesn't fall over. I like to think of it as like a hub and spoke. So you've got your platform in the middle, and I'm able to plug in these things and pull them out as they're developed, because TA Tech is a hot bed of innovation right now. There's a lot of innovation happening, and it's moving faster than we are. So as solutions come up, I want to be able to test them. As solutions that I have get surpassed, I want to be able to swap out and try somebody else's solution. So I need to be able to do that quickly. That is what innovation looks like. Innovation isn't I'm going to sign a contract that lasts 20 years and then I don't have to think about it anymore. That's not innovation, that's steady state. And I don't think that this industry is in steady state yet, or even close to it. I think, you know, my general approach to thinking about this is kind of 3 general steps. So step 1 is figure out how to match people's abilities to your opportunities, right? And you really kind of build your platform around that core, because that is kind of the most basic thing. Then you go think about how you match people's interests to their abilities. So then it's more of a kind of a recruitment marketing focus when it comes to your technology. How do I understand what people are interested in that do data science? It may not be that you just talk to them about data science. It may be that like tennis is the thing that like every data scientist loves, and like you'll just get their interest that way. And then I would say steps 3 through 100 are really in that assessment category. And I think that's where the technology arms race and talent acquisition is going to be over the next decade or so, is really how do you understand what good talent looks like, and if they're going to be a good fit for your company, especially if, you know, we can't really do on-site interviews the way we used to do them for the next couple of years. So
yeah, it's Tyler and I could spend all day together, but talking about how COVID and some of these changes has even shifted components of that stack, and in other ways the importance of augmented capabilities, augmented screenings, and kind of reducing any of the noise for that person. I think something you talk a lot about is there's also certain places where good enough is okay, and other places where good enough if you're replicating a human decision or a screening. And so, you know, I think sometimes people call this, you know, quality discussions and ethical discussions get rolled all into one and into this big mess. But this notion of, am I okay having an 80% function because I'm optimizing for cost, and what is it I'm automating, and am I okay that is going to miss the mark for 2 out of 10 people? Or if I'm trying to hire the top 5%, I want as close to the 99.9% as possible. And so I think maybe a little bit more of your thesis on, you know, what are we automating? What's good enough? You have a great analogy about a truck, your grandpa's truck.
Yeah. So, you know, you know, finding the 80% solution and is okay. Like that is a way to approach all this. Like I said, if your primary goal is simply cost reduction, then you know you don't need a Ferrari to make it to the grocery store. That's not the thing that you need. And you know, so the analogy I use is, you know, my grandpa's truck is an 80% solution. It is basically a car. It can do all those things, but damn it, like AC and power windows are sure awesome to have. So the 80%, which 80% really matters? It's not just it's not like you can take, oh, this has got 8 out of 10, therefore it's above some threshold and we take it. The 20% you're leaving out may be the most important part. It may be the part that's differentiating you from your competitors or getting you to that talent that much faster. And so you really need to be careful about setting those types of criteria. We have 8 out of 10 features. So this is and for the best price. Well, are features 9 and 10 the thing that you need? And I think that's where, you know, we are constantly working with our IT partners on, you know, pushing the envelope on what we need from a strategy standpoint and trying to meet our cost envelope as a company. Because obviously we don't have blank checks to go, you know, just spend unlimited dollars. So it is a balancing act. And automation, it's interesting that you say you bring up automation in this context, because I think one of the biggest mistakes that we make, and I know my folks that have worked with me that are on this call have heard me say this. I think one of the biggest mistakes we make is confusing our cost for our value. At almost every company, the single biggest line item in their ledger is their people. You spend more on that than anything else. So to imagine that saving a few $100,000 or tens of thousands of dollars on a function in HR, if you're a billion-dollar company that's spending billions of dollars on people, that's not the value that talent acquisition is bringing. That's not the value that your HR, your talent technology is providing for your company. And so you got to think beyond that. And what's interesting is I don't think actually that these automations, you'll see a reasonable cost savings in the short term in terms of headcount. I think a lot of folks think, especially leaders, are look at machine learning, AI solutions and think, this is great. I will get an ROI because I can reduce the number of recruiters I have because I now have this AI that's going to help me. I basically have an AI recruiter that's going to replace the people. I think what you're going to find is that, if the needle that you want to move is on the quality of talent that you're hiring, all that AI is going to do is going to relieve the pressure on those people from doing administrative tasks, from, manually sifting through resumes, manually, if I have to go through 1,000 resumes to find 25 good ones, that is my entire day. If an automation can bring that down to just 100, that I've just got to go through 100 to find those 25, that is a massive win. And now I can go spend my time really looking at and developing relationships with those 25. So I really think that our job in terms of implementing talent acquisition technologies, thinking about things like mobility, how you integrate technologies into your company. I really don't think about HR. I think about Intel. How do we go accelerate Intel? It's not about reducing. It's not about finding one or two heads among your recruiters. It's about finding one or two top engineering leaders in the industry. How do I bring them into Intel? That is so much more valuable to me than two heads out of recruiting. Does that make sense? But that narrative is tough. And
I think most people, and that's why your HR data function is so important, because if you're going to help leadership understand, it's not just about reducing headcount. And in fact, in many places, it might not be at all about reducing headcount. It's about what's the business gaining? How are we going to win against our competitor because we have better, professionals, or we have better team leads that optimize the people within the teams, or, so I think these, the kind of outcome data set that you measure and you monitor, there's probably earlier data points to measure, like, do our recruiters have more focus? Are they able to handle more relationships or more candidate reviews or a higher rec volume, or are hiring managers more satisfied, right? So there's probably intermediate metrics, but I guess how do you guys internally to Intel sell the broader vision of this transformation, of these tools that help get you to A to B, but what you're selling them is the B, right?
Yeah, and I again, this is not necessarily a straightforward problem. It's one of the. It's like mowing your lawn. You're never done. Like, it's a chore. It's a thing. it is an ongoing case that you make, because any company that's trying to be effective is worried about costs, and that is a real thing. And I don't want to make it sound like anybody who's worried about costs or whose priority is to drive down costs is wrong, because they're not wrong. Kind of there's a grotesque version of this where you just, and I think large multinationals like Intel, if there's any of them on the line, probably are in a space where they've got 6 different ATSs, and they've got 7 different CRMs, and they've got, they've just got this tangled mess of solutions, because there's been no control on, finding enterprise solutions, and there's no balance, right? They've kind of gone to one extreme. And there's another extreme where it's just like one size fits all. This is the one solution for everything globally. And that also kind of hamstrings you. So I do think that it's important to have the debate. It's important to have that tension in the system where you have your HR or talent acquisition technology leaders really trying to push the envelope and forcing people like me to make the case and to really refine the case for the thing that we're trying to do. And I think it's our job to continually try to reframe the conversation in terms of value to the company instead of cost reduction for talent acquisition. That is the big thing that every meeting I walk into, I prepare myself to make that case, and you're constantly making that case. Almost, I mean, Athena, you're an entrepreneur, right? I'm sure you never would consider your job done to pitch your company. I mean, like, it's like saying, when are you done pitching, right? Like, are you ever done? And I would say no. Like, we almost have to act like internal entrepreneurs, like constantly pitching this vision, and hopefully we can move the needle over time. And I think we have to some extent, but the battle's never done.
The work's never done. Well, and I think that's the thing with a big enough vision. It takes many years, and it has many iterations, and it learns new things. And I do think a great topic that this connects to is diversity and inclusion, right? Because this is something that was probably part of some people's strategy in some way, shapes, or forms, and is a tragedy that it wasn't more agendas, but it was part of a strategy, but maybe not a dominant strategy, or maybe not being pitched by the CEO and the executive team externally. And so I think one question, as someone who thinks a lot about artificial intelligence, deploys artificial intelligence solutions across your business, there's often a perception that if I go AI, I give up on compliance, I give up on explainability, nothing can be tested, and maybe it's just biased. And something that you talk a lot about, especially with me, is this, well, there's black box algorithms that can never explain themselves, and you probably shouldn't work with those. And then there's more explainable systems, or there's systems you can correct, or there's systems you can test. And so I think maybe your views on this, this topic is super important for this group.
Yeah, I know this is one that's near and dear to your heart. And I think I want to give you credit. I think you are the first person I heard use the term glass box, but maybe not. Maybe I heard it somewhere else. But I do think black box solutions are dangerous. I would not, hang my hat on a glass box solution to, especially as something like, black box solution to something like hiring decisions. Employment law has a long history, well-established practice. I mean, you are a much stronger expert in this area than I am. That's why I like to pick your brain on this. But and it's not just about legal questions. There's also ethical questions, right? Of who's making decisions and things like that. I actually don't, though, think that this is as scary as it needs to be. And for one reason. When I hire a person to do a job, let's say I'm hiring a recruiter, and let's say I'm at a company that has some very is very forward thinking and really wants to be strong in diversity and inclusion, right? I'm going to hire that recruiter, and I'm going to train them on how we hire and how we ensure that we have diverse candidates, and we're influencing hiring managers to consider a diverse slate, and I'm going to train them on all those things. And then I'm going to monitor them and make sure, like looking at their candidate pools, looking at their interactions with hiring managers, looking at their results, that they're actually doing it. And if they're not, I will go and I will correct them, and I will give them more training. And eventually, if they never figure this out, then maybe they're not right for my company. Mm-hmm. I think thinking about an AI solution in this space is exactly the same. It's not a different thing. So if I hire an AI to help me surface candidates, I need to be monitored. I need to train it on what I'm looking for. I need to monitor its performance, make sure that it's doing the job that I hired it to do. And if it's not, I need to be able to apply corrections. Now, I think this is where it's really important when you're evaluating solutions in this space that you make a wise choice here. If the solution you have provides you no knobs to go correct, no way to give it performance feedback, then that is not a solution that you want. That is a black box. It is just going to consume your data and spit out a recommendation, and you have no control over what's going on. If you can provide it performance feedback, just like you would a human, say, nope, you're not doing a good job. I need you I need you to stop using this thing as a criteria. I need you to pay more attention to this. We want this to be fair. And then it responds the way a good employee does, then that is a good solution. Mm-hmm. And I think when I think about it in that sense, it's no different. It feels different because it doesn't look and act and talk like a human, but that's why you need folks that are thinking about these things and are full-time thinking about how do we manage the performance of this solution. Mm. So.
Yeah, I think the interesting is the measurements, and that mm-hmm. often, the monitoring and the knobs and the concept of the knobs and realizing that, if it's a technology that can be adjusted, can tell you what it's doing and how it's doing it, and then let you be the master of the control panel, then mm-hmm. kind of that's a good thing. And that's no different than one, you're humans, and two, other processes of experimentation you have internally. So I actually think something interesting for you to share is I know a lot of the participants here are thinking about blind recruiting and blind hiring managing, and how do we, kind of solve for this bias. Yeah. But often without measuring, are the recruiters the problem? Are the hiring managers the problem? And then if we put a solution like that in place, did we just get better or did we just get worse? And so I think you all are pretty far ahead of the curve of this, deploy tech, monitor it, understand it, modify it where it needs to be, shut it down where it's not bringing the, the desired deliverable. And maybe if you can talk a little bit more about your, blinded experience, that would be great.
Yeah, there's this now famous case study out there that I think gets used often about the Chicago Symphony and the number of female musicians they had. And I think they had 0. And they started doing blind auditions. And in fact, they even made sure there was carpet down so you couldn't hear the sound of somebody's shoes and use that to identify whether someone was male or female. And that had a huge impact on changing the mix of the gender mix in the Chicago Symphony. Really, it's an awesome example. It's excellent. It's useful in most contexts. It has its limits, however. I think the the temptation then is to take that and go, we need to make our entire process blind so we can be like the Chicago Symphony. Well, if your goal is to change the representation of within your business, right? Let's say you've got a lot of software engineers, it's heavily male dominated, you want to have more female developers, right? If I make it completely blind, then, and let's say, 30% of developers are women, then if I just take, 100 applicants, chances are, if I just pull out of that bag at random, most of the people I push to interview for the manager aren't going to be women. And I will never change I'll never change my mix at my company, because just by pulling them out of the bag at random, I'm not going statistically, I'm not going to make a difference. So it's not about being completely blind. It's about making sure that the mix of candidates that you're giving to the hiring manager is representative of what you want your company to look like, not of who's applying. Mm-hmm. And now at the very base level, everybody needs to be qualified for the job. You cannot be putting people forward that aren't qualified. So it's not that you are selecting people from the bottom of the barrel. This is actually where an AI can be really helpful. It can help you sort through those hundreds of applicants and find all of the candidates that are truly good matches. And then from those A candidates, can I create a slate for my hiring manager that, let's say I want my company to be 50-50 women and men, right? Can I give them a slate that's 50-50? Because I guarantee you that as software developers, the natural applicants are not 50-50 women and men. So I do need to apply some judgment to what I'm giving to my hiring manager. And making it completely blind isn't really going to move the needle for your company.
Yeah, I think we actually have a question from the crowd on the attendees on if you can address whether or not you're using a multivariate approach to understanding the effectiveness of your approach. Such a complex topic that requires looking at the issue from a larger perspective. I think there's the issue of recruiter efficiency, which is one piece we've covered. And then there's probably this other issue. So Solange, I don't know if you want to clarify, of diversity and inclusion and representation. I think the biggest flaw of our space is everyone simplifies it down to, I just want a silver bullet. I want to buy my Textio product and know that I've checked this box called D&I is going to be solved. But if it's not you're reaching diverse candidates and they're just not converting to your job problem across all jobs, all divisions, departments, and role types, and in fact, it's your reach, or to your mention, the qualifications of the people who apply, underrepresented groups tend to have on average less years of relevant experience in the areas that they're pursuing, a increase of representation, right? So if we don't maybe modify the 9-year experienced hardware engineer job to a 5-year experienced hardware job, or a PhD in a predominantly white male field versus open it up to other areas that might be more inclusive. And so I don't know if we have the clarity of exactly what multivariant approach versus effectiveness, but Tyler, maybe just even in answering
So I'll take a stab at the question here. I think what the question here is when we're looking at identifying top talent, are we looking at just kind of one or two factors? Like, GPA, for example, has been shown time and again to be a terrible predictor of success in your career. Even school is not a good predictor, right? The MIT is a great school, but you're just as likely to get a high performer from, North Carolina State, right? Like they're not. It's those traditional methods for selecting talent have been shown time and again to not be good predictors. So the high level answer is absolutely. We are looking at many factors to try to predict who's going to be a good fit. And that's actually where a machine learning and AI-based, or an AI-based solution like HiredScore actually helps us quite a bit, because they are breaking down and sort of comprehending many of those factors that we're not going in and designing a priori. We're relying on the algorithm to kind of help us know what strong talent looks like. That being said, to your point, Athena, it's not as simple as just selecting the best applicants. Like, if you think about it as flow rates, like flow in and flow out, my requisition is kind of where those applicants are kind of, I'm storing them in this pool, and yes, I can control the flow out through selection. My AI can help me find top talent. I can make a good interview pool, and I can send that to the hiring manager. But the flow in is just as important. In fact, it may be even more important if I want to find top talent that is diverse. And I really need to open that net as wide as possible. So, like you're saying, it's not just about the type of language I use in terms of like what's attractive to talent, because my brand as a company is a way bigger magnet than the wording in my job requisition. It's also the requirements I'm putting on the job. Like you're saying, if I am creating requirements that are so strict that there are literally 10 people in the country that can do this thing, the chances of me successfully finding the one candidate that's not a white male, for example, goes down dramatically. So really thinking about what those requirements are. Do you really need, I know that John just left the company and we were all missing John, and we'd love to have someone that looked just like John, like with the years of experience and the degree and the background, because he was so effective. But do you really need the PhD? Do you really need it to be in specifically, computer science, and that they went to one of these 3 schools, and that they have worked at one of these 3 companies? If you can broaden that, then your chances of finding top talent go up. Yep. Like, broadening the funnel. And good recruiters do this. This is part of the job of a good recruiter, is that consulting piece where they help the manager broaden that funnel.
Yeah. Well, and actually it's with our new D&I solutions, I think that's what was confusing for a lot of people, which was, well, why is the most important piece of this the continual reporting, right? And that is, and it's saying, did we not have a population problem and now we do? Or maybe with COVID in these areas, we no longer have a population problem, and for the first time we see a hiring manager bias, or we see the specificity of requirements because we have a new team lead just got more and more exclusive, and now for the first time we're including the gender that we've never had before at a higher rate. So I think the data and the ability to capture the right data across the org and use that to deliver a strategy. And I know we don't have much time to get into it, but for those folks on the line interested in kind of the next phase, I think, of Intel's journey in talent management, and thinking about teams and equipping managers with data on their people. Tyler, one of the things that I've always could spend more time with you on is your detection up front of the data we're collecting on our people is not the data that can give us, the tools to manage them well, or move them around the org well, or make good decisions. So sometimes it starts with, do we even have the data to ask the questions we need to ask? And if not, what should we be collecting? And then once we have that, how do we put the right tools in the right stakeholders?
Yeah, I've shifted my focus over the last few months. I was focused exclusively on talent acquisition for a few years, and I've broadened that focus now to kind of look at employee mobility across the company. How do we stretch and add and and bring folks, you know, really put the tools in the hands of the people within our company. And I think there's sort of a three-pronged problem here, and it's related to talent acquisition, but talent acquisition is kind of one piece of it. I think real mobility comes in three parts. You've got tools for leaders, so they're making decisions about, you know, do I have enough resources on my highest priority projects, or is my talent in the right spot? I have got tools for recruiters. So they are looking at and sorting through and vetting not just external candidates, but internal ones as well. Maybe I have a group maybe I have a project that's been cut and I've got some great talent and I don't want to let them walk out the door and I need to find places for them. So, you know, do I have the tools to kind of find them a new home? And third, there's the tools for the employees. You know, when they walk in the store and say, hey, I want a new opportunity to learn or a new job within the company. And all three of those rely on having a solid set of data about the people that you're looking at, their interests and their abilities. Now, external candidates, they tell us that, right? They apply, they go to our career site, they give us clues about them and what they're interested in, what they want to do. And so we can use that to kind of help make some decisions. Our employees don't necessarily provide that to us on a regular basis. And when we go and do things like run a campaign and say, hey, tell us your skills, give us your resume, we actually get fairly low uptake because they have no incentive to. They maybe like their manager, they like the thing they're working on. They're not necessarily looking to move, but a lot of times those like corporate decisions aren't based on there's between what employees want and what the company needs. And that's an important balance to identify. Mobility, opportunities to move, to grow, to develop, to stay relevant in the industry, that is the incentive. When people see that they've got an opportunity, they're more than willing to give you their resume. They're more than willing to tell you what they want to do. And so those are, I know we're short on time here, but those are some of the things that we're thinking about, and then heavily of how do we kind of create this virtuous cycle of value to employees so that they're more than happy. They're getting something for sharing with me their latest skills, and a complete picture of the company so that we can make smart decisions as a company. Because I think if we can make better decisions, we can eliminate things like layoffs. Right, a lot of like layoffs are kind of this like boom and bust cycle where you're making kind of yo-yo decisions because you don't really have a clear picture of what you have and where you could use them.
Yeah. I wish we could merge the you and Graham and the Pfizer and Intel all comes together here. Would be a really fun discussion and a lot of just such exciting avenues that you're pursuing, that you're driving for Intel, that are going to be really important for keeping people, you know, with jobs, keeping people in jobs, upskilled and learning new things and redeployed in areas that is not just good for Intel, but good for their career and good for their growth. And so I love this topic. I wish we had more time. Tyler, thank you so much for joining us. It was such a pleasure. And to our attendees, thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed. Tyler, I don't know if you provide your email for people following up or with more questions. I know they can find you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'll put my email in the chat, and if anyone wants to follow up, you're more than welcome to reach out to me.
Great. Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Our next session will start in 4 minutes and feature Graham, who you saw a sneak peek of, from Pfizer. So feel free to stick around. Thank you, Tyler. We loved having you.
Great. Bye, everybody.